Live, brewed and coffee. Got my coffee here. Mm. Love. Except it says evil. Oh, evil. Ooh. No. Okay. So let's get started. I have been in my master's program talking to some of the most amazing individuals. And I want them to come on my podcast because these are the individuals that are committed to the great work and are working every day to become better human beings, to support humanity, right? And they're altruistic or they're at a state of where they want to give back and serve humanity from a place of love and kindness and compassion, and just some amazing, really awesome people in my program. And kind of cool because one of the individuals is a spiritual alchemist, has been for his whole life, because he his parents were spiritual alchemists, which is kind of cool. And so you know what? I don't know why this is not charging. Hold on. I have to charge my computer. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to take a break. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, I'll be right back. Let's see here. What is going on? Let's see if it charges. There it is. Yes, it's charging. Okay, let me get back on here. Sorry, guys. In and out of the frame. Okay, so let me sit my little booty right back down, like booty, little booty, whatever it is. Anyway, he is going to be interviewing Dennis E. Hawk, which is pretty cool because there's a book that I love, and it's Transformation. And I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's a great book. Anyway, pretty deep stuff. And kind of cool to be connected to individuals that understand the great work because, again, there's a lot to it. And it's a rabbit hole you'll never fully comprehend. You can never fully know it all. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of going down these kind of holes because we're always sort of what I call the fool or the child, right? We always a beginner in spiritual alchemy. You're always learning something new or brewing up or conjuring a new little potion for your life, right? And so it's trial and error. I'm good, Danae. Is it Danae? Danae. I am Jess. Oh, hey, Jess. How are you? Good grand rising to you. Grand rising, Jess. So I want to continue on this essential spirituality book, which is pretty awesome. I like it a lot. I like it because this is the doing part of spiritual work. We talk about it conceptually, and it's really quite easy to get into these conversations with people about spiritual practice and what we think spirituality is and faith. And of course, people fight. And we don't need to argue or fight about this stuff because there's commonalities across all religions and all spiritual practice. There's commonalities, and now we're starting to recognize what is the same. It's not different. What is the same? And one thing that this book talks about is the doing. How do we do it rather than just talk about it and maybe fight about who's right, wrong, good, or bad, that we actually put into practice these principles and that we learn how to take them from our head, right, into practice, into the physical world. So how do we do that? Well, this book is a great start to do that. When I do my, good morning, Jess. Is it the same Jess? Did you enter? And you changed your name to Jess. I get it on Instagram. So cheers to you. So we do these practices and it's allowing us to do, right? There's the being, the doing, and then we have certain results after we do it. And I love that model. And I sort of go over that model in my trainings. So that's part of it. It's a little part of it. But spiritual practices, right? What do they do and how do they do it? Little by little, wean yourself This is the gist of what I have to say. From an embryo whose nourishment comes in the blood, move to an infant drinking milk, to a child on solid foods, to a searcher after wisdom, to a hunter of more invisible game. So the hunter of more invisible game, meaning that we, right, are always looking and searching for. Now, here's the deal. There's nothing to search for, but it's so darn fun to search, right? Like that's the beauty of this, is that there's so much to um, you know, gather and understand and how to go through, right, this practice. So what do spiritual practices do, and how exactly do they do it? The most venerable answers are that the gods intervene in our lives, and that the practices modify life energy. For example, by raising Kundalini energy or balancing the yin and the yang. However, the most common and vivid descriptions involve metaphors. And this is really kind of cool because this goes into the shadow work. And shadow work is really, um, um, oh, you're not disturbing. So for me, I take calls, but I'll take them at the end. So if you want to wait until the end of the talk, then we can discuss. If that, and that's totally up to you. um, if you want to stay. Sometimes I'm long-winded on stuff, but I want to get through this because I feel like it's critical for the practice. So let's see. Okay, so this goes into the shadow, right? When we talk about the descriptions. So it's the metaphors and the balancing of the yin and the yang and the kundalini energy. It's kind of cool because some of the practices that come along with this. Now, people hear kundalini and they think that it's a religious thing, and it's not. It's a practice. There's a difference. There's a distinction, and that's really important to talk about, because we know that it might have derived from a particular area, but people wanted to sort of put it into this religious perspective. And then it closed the minds of individuals to practice this thing because, oh, it came from there, it must be evil. It's not. Kundalini is just working with your breath, but it does open up the shadow side of your life. So you've got to be careful with using that energy. And then the balancing of the yin and the yang. Okay, this is energy that comes from Kundalini, comes from India, right? We get that Kundalini yoga. The Yin Yang comes from China. A lot of this stuff comes from Asia. And I always say Asia did it right. Asia's done it right. They have these ancient practices. Now, here's the deal. We have native practices too, but their practices were hidden and taken from people to practice. These practices of Kundalini energy and yin and yang have been handed down, and you can still do these practices. Kundalini yoga. So if it was a practice you wanted to take on, you can just go. I'd be careful with who you follow. I always am careful about who I follow. I waited till the right teacher showed up to teach me Kundalini. I didn't just go online and follow it, because the breath, when we start to connect to our breath, powerful things start to happen. Okay, the breath is one of our greatest powers that we don't even tap into or know how to utilize. Kundalini yoga teaches us that, teaches us how to use the breath to tap into our own power. And I'll tell you this morning I did a couple of Kundalini practices to clear out the obstruction in my face. And I've done Kundalini to the point where my body had never felt so good. And I thought to myself, why am I not doing this every day? This is a practice that I should be doing daily, even if it's for 5 minutes. Why? Because it helps to clear the obstruction and helps me utilize the breath, which is the most important thing we have. It's one thing we can't go without for very long. Okay. Now, the yin yang is really cool. That could be Tai Chi. Tai Chi, the symbol for Tai Chi is actually the yin yang. It's actually the symbol for it, because it teaches you how to balance your body. It teaches you how to move from one to the other. In fact, there are principles to Tai Chi, and one of them is understanding how to move the yin yang energy in the body. Again, these are practices. There's other practices that help balance the yin and yang. Yoga, again, is another one. So we don't want to be too much of one or the other. We're sort of looking for that balance, right? The middle. What is the middle for us? How do we get to the middle? However, the most common and vivid descriptions involve metaphors. Metaphors being the depictions or the pictures that arise within our unconscious mind into the conscious mind and being able to understand and express them. So it could be super, good morning, Kumar. How are you? Super hard to start to understand those and to go through the work because this can become shadow work, right? So really what we're talking about here is some archetypal figures. How do archetypes show up in our essence, in our beingness? And archetypes can be the personalities or the greater patterns that I've talked about before, right? So we use metaphors. So metaphors are the figures in the speech in which describe one thing, usually something subtle or difficult to grasp, in terms of something else, more concrete and comprehensible. Spiritual experiences and transformations, by their very nature, are often subtle and indefinable. Okay. And metaphorical descriptions, therefore, abound. Each of the metaphors illustrates an aspect of spiritual development, and together they paint a rich, multifaceted picture of ways spiritual practices work, their many effects. The following are some of the most potent metaphors of transformation that guide and describe spiritual growth. Okay. And we use, if you've noticed, in every religion, there's metaphors in every religion. Okay. So, awakening. Our usual condition is semi-conscious, say the sages, and spiritual practices awaken us from our slumber. Now, here's the deal. Being very, 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 very careful about the practices that we take on and going slow. There is no need for you to be going all crazy into your practices because it'll become overwhelming. You're going to go entirely crazy if you do. And also, you're awakening things inside you that you didn't even know exist. You've got to go slow with this stuff. People want to jump all in, and I can tell you I'm one of those people. I'll do it all. I can do it, But the reality is it's not beneficial because slow, steady progress over time, right, allows for you to continue to stay with the practice rather than trying to jump all in all at once. In other words, we form better habits when we go slow and we start slow. So, for instance, I'm in tobacco prevention. I tell people part of the process, because this is the process that they came up with and they realized worked, is not to quit all at once, go cold turkey, right? We heard that, go cold turkey. Most people can't do that. But what if we said, okay, so what if we took it down and slowly started taking away one at a time? Instead of doing 10 cigarettes a day, maybe you do 8. Okay. You're not going to feel the pain too much. Then maybe you go down to 6, maybe you're eliminating 2 at a time, but you're slowly, right, taking away that poison slowly. Well, the same thing is with the practice. If you haven't been flooded with harmony and peace, your body and you are not going to get used to it. There's going to be a lot of resistance and rejection. We're used to dealing with suffering and drama and all the things that go on, right? Being under stress. In fact, more people are stressed out and living in anxiety than not. And so how do we start to allow ourselves to let go of that anxiety or stress? And part of it, right, is a little at a time. So breathing or drinking water or whatever your practice is, right? And we did have a person talk about drinking water, and that was a practice I had done ages ago, right? Where I wrote down I need to drink more water, and that's something we could all be mindful of, or do Kundalini to clear out the air, but do it not an hour every single day. Maybe I do it 10 minutes every morning or 5 minutes. That way, at least I give it some time until I can build up to the practice of doing it longer or for more time. Okay, so dehypnosis. Our slumber is said to be a kind of a trance or hypnosis. Hypnotized people suffer a constricted state of mind in which their awareness and behavior are largely limited by the suggestions of other people. Yet hypnotized people usually recognize neither their limitation nor the fact that they are being hypnotized. Only when dehypnotized do they become free and know that they were entranced. Spiritual practices free us from the collective trance in which we all slumber. Again, awakening. People talk about what the awakening is. What is awakening, right? We are in a slumber. And I think there was like 3 years ago, whatever it was, I was like, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. I kept saying, wake up, right? Because now we're in a point where everything is right in front of our face. No, but they're not hiding anything. But because people are in such a trance, they're feeding them the poison and people are okay with it. They're okay with it, right? Because they're getting fed their own what? They're in a trance. They're not waking up. It's almost like snap the fingers, wake up so that you can see the truth. But most people, right? They say ignorance is bliss. Some people, and I won't say most people, some people don't want to deal with the shadow because once you open that up, you have to face yourself. And it's harder to face yourself than it is to face anything else. Even, right, what they would say evil or the demons. Face yourself. And that's harder because then you have to come to the realization that some of that lives within you. And people just don't want to admit it. We have that in us, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't know it. How would we know evil if some evil didn't live within us, right? And and I don't want to say evil, but sin, I think is a better word. Sin meaning we missed the mark, not sin as though you're this terrible person that's gonna like go to hell, but sin as though we missed the mark. We're constantly off balance, right? We do things that are not necessarily seen as completely moral all the time, right? Like, oh, like this is an example. And most people will be like, that's nothing. But it is, because if we looked at it in the scope of everything, it is what it is. Like, okay, I'm going to just take some of these sweet and lows, right? Or, I've done this before. I'm going to take more of the sweetener so that I can have for later from this store. Well, that would be considered stealing, right? But they're not going to say anything, right? If you took extra packages of sweetener, they're not going to say anything. But if we were living 100% moral life, we would say no. Or smashing a bug. Like, I don't believe in murder, but I'll kill a bug, as if that bug has less of a right to live than you do. It's still there. There's that subtle thing that's there. It's subtle, right? But we don't think it to be not moral, right? But again, in a way it is. It throws us off balance because we're taking away a life and we think that we have the power to do that, so we do it, which is hard, right? So I see people step on bugs and I'm like, oh, no. Right? For me, it's painful. Even roaches, and I trust me, if I could, it's hard because it's like you want to like get rid of them, right? You're like, go away. But I won't. I'm like, I can't, I just won't do it, right? Because I understand that even that one act of doing that says that, hey, I think I'm superior. I think that I have the right to take that life and mine is more important. Interesting, but then we get to the ego and this can go in so many different ways, right? Of course, because that's alchemy, but still that's dealing with the shadow side. Literally it is, because what it's saying is myself and my survival is more important than your survival. And that's part of the species. That's part of that, something that lives within us. It lives within us, right? So, and that's just part of the storyline. We want to live. We want to survive as a species. If we didn't, we wouldn't be here. We would be gone. We would be not in existence. So waking up, enlightenment, according to the metaphor, we stumble about an inner darkness, but spiritual discipline brings understanding, light, and vision. uncovering. So we, according to this metaphor, we stumble about in darkness, meaning we don't have sure footing in darkness. We don't have sure footing. And here's the deal with darkness and sure footing and with Tai Chi or Qigong. When we do our stepping right and we do that, we have to make sure that we have sure footing. So if I was blindfolded and I was asked to step, the first thing in my mind would go to my Qigong stepping, my Tai Chi, and I would understand how to move about without, maybe hurting myself. And that it gives you the opportunity to understand that before you take that next step, that you make sure that there's sure ground underneath you. That's why I love Kung Fu. The practices are everything. It's all spiritual. It's all interconnected to this. But we stumble around in the darkness because we don't have sure footing and because we're afraid. We're afraid to close our eyes and take that step. Why? Because we don't know how to do it. And so we stumble around. So it takes some time. So uncovering our nature of self, or our nature, our true nature, sorry, let me read this again. Our true nature or self is said to be covered or veiled from awareness, but spiritual discipline dissolves the veils and restores awareness to our true identities. That's the hard part, lifting the veil and facing ourselves in the mirror. If you take the veil and you look at yourself in the mirror, truly look at yourself in the mirror and accept all that you are. Sometimes we don't want to accept some of those, what we call demons inside of us, right? That the part of us that is the shadow, those thoughts that we keep hidden from public, right? That no one can hear. They're in us, but no one can hear them. And it's that part. Okay. Freedom. We are said to be enslaved by our own wayward motives, emotions, but taming them brings freedom. Metamorphosis. As nature transforms the caterpillar into exquisite butterfly, so too do spiritual practices transform us. Unfolding. The beauty of the rose may be hidden, but it is already present within the bud. Likewise, our transcendence, beauty, and potential are hidden within, and spiritual practices help us unfold and blossom. This is a beautiful metaphor, like the lotus, right? The lotus. The lotus comes from the murk and it rises into the beauty. That's the unfolding. Wholeness. Both spiritual traditions and modern psychology suggest that our minds are sadly splintered and disassociated into warring fragments. Spiritual practices heal and hold the mind and restore us into unity of mind and purpose. That's the hardest one. And that's kind of where we are with our worldviews, where we go the modern, postmodern, and post-modern, where we get into integral practices. And that's really what this is. It's about integrating all that we know into one. So we think that we're separate, but really what we're doing is we're taking the fragmented parts and we're weaving them into what we call ourselves, like a quilt, right? Taking patches and putting them together to make something magnificent. And if we look at some of the patchwork, it's pretty beautiful, right? We look at it and we say, wow, how did they come up with those designs? And so you can see yourself as that way. You're just picking from certain pieces of the unconscious and you're sort of creating this conscious piece of art that you are. So the unconscious has everything available and we just sort of pick for ourselves what we feel is true to us within that whole entire stream of unconscious stuff. In the darkness, we pick from, right? And we try it on. Sometimes we close our eyes and we put it on and we're like, nah, not that one. And then we try again, we open our eyes and we're like, maybe, kind of like that one. Oh, it works. Okay. And I think I'm just talking to myself today, which is interesting. I don't think I've ever gone a whole entire show just talking to myself. Hopefully people will listen later. I certainly hope so, because this is critical information. This is the doing part of spiritual practice, talking about it. And, it's fun. It's fun to talk about all these things, but actually doing is the real work. getting in there and actually digging in. It's like you can talk about digging a hole and what it would look like, but actually doing it is a whole other ballpark, right? When you're digging that hole, it's a whole different thing. Okay, let's see. Journey. The metaphor of the journey implies that we're traveling to a goal. This goal can seem far distant place, but spiritual wisdom reveals that the goal is ourself and forever here and now, awaiting only our recognition and remembrance in this and every moment. The journey is to remember yourself. Do the inward work. Know thyself. Death and rebirth. The old-fashioned false self must yield and make way for the new and true, which is kind of where the phoenix comes from, right? Death and rebirth, if we looked at baptism, that's the same thing, where we're shedding the old skin and we're rediscovering who we truly are. We're getting closer to who we truly are because we've been programmed by so many people. So many people said, your parents, right? You're this, you're that, or you're not this, you're not that, or you're a brat, right? I used to be called Nat the Brat growing up, and I was a brat. Everybody called me a brat, right? And that's basically the label that they were giving me. And, I just wore it and laughed about it. I thought, okay, I'm a brat. Haha, I don't care. Whatever. I am who I am. And so we start to shed that old skin. Like people would say, you're stubborn, right? Okay, I'm stubborn. Well, as I got older, I'm like, no, I'm determined. There's a difference. I'm determined to get this done, and I'm going to get it done. And I do. Okay. Determination and being stubborn are two different things. Stubborn saying I'm right, you're wrong, where I can say that I'm wrong. I'm like, oh yeah, that didn't work. Let's try this. But I'm determined to get it done, even if I have to shift gears in order to get it done. So difference, right? But we start to shed all of those old ideas about what people say about us. And we can even tell them, no, that's not me. Sorry. You're generalizing who I am and putting me in a box. I'm not the box. I'm the circle. Okay. Or whatever it is. So that dying, and that is the phoenix, right? That is the phoenix rising, where the phoenix burns down to ashes and re-rises. And we see this depiction or metaphor or this beautiful depiction of the phoenix happening everywhere, because we're in a whole new era, in the era of enlightenment, right? We're in an era where people are waking up to their true authentic self. More and more people are talking about that. What does that mean? How do I engage in it? So we must shed the old and almost have this grieving process of letting go of those old and arising into the new, right? The new. The surrender for the former self-image can feel like dying. That's what I just said. Out of the ashes. Oh, here we go. Look. Oh my God. See, I don't even need to read the book. I already said I've never read this part. I'm reading this for the first time, and look what it says. Exactly what I said. Out of the ashes, the ego arises phoenix-like, a new self-image. This new self-image, it will itself die and be reborn repeatedly until finally recognize that who and what we really are is far beyond all images and concepts. That's right. Then there is no self-image left to die, and only the deathless remains. And that's beautiful, because this speaks to our immortality, right? How are we immortal? Well, people are afraid. They think our shell is our mortality, right? Like they think that after that maybe there's nothing, but there's this something. There is this something that's there. This something that we can't really put our fingers on, right? We can't touch it, but it washes away and back into the ocean. So it's almost like the tides of the ocean, right? A drop of water perhaps falls into the ocean, back into the sea. It's not that same one drop of water, but it ends up being in the ocean with all of water. But when condensation happens and the water's lifted, right? And here we go with some alchemy part of it. Natural law. Condensation happens, right? And as the moisture rises into the clouds, then it sort of looks like and feels like these droplets are separate. It looks that way, right? When we look at rain, each droplet seems to be its own drop. But when it falls back down, rather than die, it sort of just morphs back into the bigger consciousness, right? And that's why water is such a beautiful depiction of what the unconscious and conscious mind can be, because the water rises, separates, but it's not separate. It still came from the same source and then drops right back into the same source. And then this cycle happens over and over and over again. So you can see yourself as that way, our spirit, if you want to think of it that way. But we have access to all of these different ways of being and becoming. So we're constantly becoming. Pretty cool, right? Okay. So there you have it. All right. So it looks like I had all of one person on here. And I don't know who it is. I think it's Kumar still. Good morning. Or good grand rising. Again, if you're on Facebook, please say good morning or grand rising or however you want to say hello, because the live videos don't, sometimes Facebook doesn't show me who's on here for whatever reason. I don't know why. So they've changed the algorithms, or I don't know what they've done. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I know because I don't. So there you go. All right. So you guys it's Thursday. Have a great Thursday. I will be seeing you guys tomorrow. I want to continue on this path because I think it's really good. And I really hope people join in on this particular part of it, because this is really the meat and potatoes. This is where things get good. This is where we start to understand how to apply this stuff to our life, rather than just talk about it. That's what I keep saying. It's like, it's not just talking, it's actual doing. We got to do something. Can't just talk about it. Or you can, but you're never going to get the results you want. There has to be some application in some way to get the results that we desire. We can't just sit there and go, and expect things that are just going to fall out of the sky. It's not how it works. Not entirely. There's a way to get there, but you have to do the work in order to get there. So there's a lot there. Okay. Oh, it's Roberto. Good morning. Or grand rising. So there you have it. So I hope more people get on here, because that would be great, or listen to this particular thing, because it's going to help you. It's going to support you in really figuring out or getting closer to, how do I bring these practices into the material world? Who gives a shit about, okay, I should say, conceptualizing is fun. Talking about big things are fun. It's fun. Of course it's fun. It's fun to talk about theories, and it's fun to talk about, well, what about this or this or this? Those conversations are fun to have, and that's why we have them. But while those conversations are going, there are people who are actually applying the work and getting things done. And so those people get stuck in a dialogue, and they perpetuate the dialogue. And they're like a dog chasing a tail, never getting anywhere. And then you have the ones who are doing. Now there's a both. And so for me, I'm a doer. So I have to sometimes come back to the becoming, to being, and recognize, oh, okay, how am I being here? Where do I get to just be? Okay. And that's uncomfortable for me. It really is, because I like to do. I'm constantly, how do I serve? How do I give back? What do I say? How do I, right? So looking at that, if we looked at the dialogue, and I just want to say this one last thing, if we looked at the dialogue over the past year since COVID and all this, how many people are still talking about COVID? How many people are still talking about politics? How many people are still talking about, the vaccine? Is it right? Is it wrong? Those conversations, I'm not saying they don't matter, but they're stuck in that dialogue, and they're not actually doing the things that they love, because they're stuck in that perpetual cycle. Here's the deal. If you want to get out of that cycle, and I'm out of that cycle, I don't even talk about it. I don't even care to talk about it. I'll be honest with you. It's not impacting my life personally right now, because I have things I got to get done, right? And so because that dialogue will keep you trapped in a conceptual dialogue, you cannot change the mind of a person. So why would I go dialogue and say, this is what I think, these are my opinions, you should do this, you should do that? Because I'm not here to change the minds of individuals. If people feel comfortable doing what they're going to do, go do it. You do you. I'll do me. Whatever's going to make you feel better, right? So there's people who say, well, I'm going to engage in this, and people I'm going to engage in that. And then they're trying to convince each other, and it's like, why? I'm not going to spend my energy trying to convince somebody to think like me. That's crazy. That's insanity, really, to be honest with you, because it'll never happen. Go ahead, try it, and you'll waste your whole life trying to change a person. You can't do it. It's not the point. So what do you do? What I do, I work on myself and my goals, and I focus on that. And that's it. And in the time that individuals are stuck in that conversation, they've wasted all of the precious time that was gifted to them to work on themselves and their goals and the things that they truly, their purpose, the purpose of coming, becoming, and experiencing. And it's okay, they're experiencing something. So they're experiencing that dialogue. And if that's what they want to do, cool, totally up to them. But what if there was something that you wanted to do, but you're stuck in that dialogue? Concepts and theories and all that are fun, but they're not going to get you closer to your results. It's not going to happen. You've got to break yourself free from that. So it's why I do the goals update, because in my goals, I said I'm going to take Kung Fu, and that's what I do. I go to Kung Fu, I work out, I eat right, I travel, I do all the things that I still want to do. My life has not changed very much. I'm still doing what I choose to do. And I don't have to dialogue about that. I just choose not to participate. And I create my own world, okay? My own world where I have peace and harmony and love for all, regardless of the choices that they make or regardless of what mindset they have. I don't need to be right about it. It's not my problem. If it's inflicted upon me or forced upon me, then it becomes my thing and I'll deal with it for myself. But I don't need to convince others. So this is a practice of how do you take your life on? Should you choose to do this? Then I will knight you, especially the guys. You will be knighted if you take on yourself, because guess what? It takes a true warrior to take your own self on. It takes a true warrior. That's where the warrior exists, in knowing yourself. That's a warrior, because it's not fun all the time. And the work is hard. But there's people that are committed to the great work, right? That came here for the purpose of teaching the great work, for the purpose of supporting others in the great work, right? And that's my purpose since I was a little girl. Now I just have the platform to do it. Support. Okay, so you guys are beautiful. You guys are powerful. Remember that you are more powerful than you probably even know. You don't even know how powerful you are. You just don't even get it. You don't. I don't think you really truly understand. And I'm telling you, you are. So have that belief in yourself, okay? So I love you guys. Have a fantastical day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye. Jess, I don't know if you're on here. Do you want to call in? I'll stay on the Podbean for just a while. Okay, I don't think so. All right. Have a great day. Love you guys. Bye.